Have you ever been offered everything you desperately needed in exchange for the one thing you still had left? Your integrity? Imagine this moment. It's late at night. The office is completely empty. The city lights glitter coldly through the large windows like distant, indifferent stars. Your boss, the man you've worked for loyally for 3 years, slides a thick, unmarked envelope across the desk and whispers in a calm, controlled voice, "Take the money, sign the documents tomorrow morning," and this never happened. No one will ever know. Inside that envelope is enough cash to wipe away every single debt you carry, enough to pay your mother's crushing hospital bills, enough to finally stop choosing between food and medicine, enough to breathe again. But you know exactly what taking it really means. And in that single trembling moment, with your heart pounding and your future hanging in the balance, you make a choice most people never have to face. You gently push the envelope back across the desk and say softly, "I'll know." That one quiet sentence cost her everything. This is the story of Sophia Bennett, a tired, ordinary woman who refused a bribe and lost her job, her security, and her last hope the very next day. But what happened weeks later would prove that sometimes the hardest choice you make is the only one that eventually saves you. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. Lang Investment Partners' headquarters on the 42nd floor was almost entirely dark. Only a few desk lamps remained on, casting long shadows across empty workstations. Sophia Bennett sat across from her boss, Marcus Langford, in his corner office. Her shoulders ached from hours of typing and reviewing documents. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but she kept her posture straight out of habit. Marcus Langford, 52 years old, was the definition of controlled success. Sharp jawline, silver threading through his dark hair, and a navy suit that cost more than Sophia's annual rent. He had built this firm from a small advisory practice into a major investment player. People respected him, feared him, wanted to be him. He didn't look at her when he spoke. His eyes were fixed on the glittering city skyline as he slowly slid the thick envelope across the polished mahogany desk. "Take it," he said quietly, almost conversationally. Sophia's gaze dropped to the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. "Sign the documents tomorrow morning," Marcus continued, his voice low and measured. "Just adjust the valuation figures on the Meridian file. Nothing drastic, just enough to make the numbers look cleaner for the board and the regulators. No one will ever know." He finally turned his head and looked at her. "It's enough to cover your mother's treatments for the next 2 years. I know the bills have been piling up. The specialist visits, the medication, the hospital stays, this can make all of that disappear." Sophia felt her chest tighten painfully. She knew exactly how bad things had become. The latest hospital bill had arrived 3 days ago, $18,400 overdue. Her mother had started lying on phone calls, saying she was feeling much better, so Sophia wouldn't worry. The pharmacy had already sent 2 final warnings. Rent was due in 6 days. Her savings account balance was 127. Her hand moved almost involuntarily toward the envelope. She opened it just enough to see the neat stacks of $100 bills inside. For one long, agonizing moment, she allowed herself to imagine what that money could do. Pay off the overdue treatments. Get her mother the new experimental protocol the doctor had mentioned. Sleep without waking up in panic at 3 a.m., wondering how she would keep them both alive. Her fingers trembled. Then she heard her mother's voice in her memory, weak but clear from one of their late-night hospital conversations months ago. "You've always done things the right way, Sophia. Don't ever let the world change that about you, no matter how hard it gets. Sophia closed the envelope slowly. She pushed it back across the desk until it rested in front of Marcus again. Her voice came out softer than she intended, but completely steady. "I'll know." Marcus stared at her for a long, heavy moment. There was no explosion, no shouting, no dramatic anger, just a faint look of disappointment, as if she had failed some invisible test he had set for her. He leaned back in his leather chair. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Sophia." Sophia stood up slowly, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her. "I'm sorry, Mr. Langford. I can't do it." She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. Marcus didn't stop her. He simply watched her leave in silence, his expression unreadable. The next morning arrived with cruel brightness. Sophia Bennett walked into Lang Investment Partners at 7:45 a.m., the same time she always did. She had barely slept. Her eyes were puffy, but she had still made the effort to look presentable. A simple white blouse, black trousers, and the silver necklace her mother had given her years ago. She greeted the security guard at the lobby with her usual small smile. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning, Miss Bennett," he replied, but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. That was the first warning. When she reached her desk on the 42nd floor, the atmosphere felt wrong. A few colleagues glanced at her and quickly looked away. No one said good morning. The usual quiet morning chatter was missing. She had just sat down and was about to boot up her computer when her phone rang. It was HR. "Miss Bennett, could you please come to conference room B immediately?" Her stomach dropped. She walked down the long hallway, feeling like she was moving through thick fog. When she entered the conference room, 2 HR representatives were already seated, a woman in her 40s named Karen and a younger man named Ryan. Both wore professional, neutral expressions. "Please have a seat, Sophia," Karen said. Sophia sat down, her hands folded tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking. Karen didn't waste time. "Your position with Lang Investment Partners is being terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow to the chest. She blinked slowly, trying to process them. "Why?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Karen slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Company restructuring. Your role is no longer required. No explanation about the bribe, no mention of the envelope, no accusations. Just cold, clinical corporate language." Sophia stared at the paper. She had worked here for 3 years. She had stayed late countless nights. She had covered for Marcus when he was unavailable. She had never taken a single sick day, even when her mother was at her worst. And now, this. Ryan spoke next, his tone almost sympathetic, but still detached. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items. You have 15 minutes. Your access card will be deactivated at 9:30 a.m. Sophia felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She stood up slowly. "I understand," she said, her voice steady even though everything inside her was shaking. As she walked back to her desk with the security guard silently trailing behind her, the office had gone eerily quiet. Colleagues who used to chat with her about weekend plans now stared at their screens. One woman, Sarah from accounting, who had once shared lunch with her, opened her mouth as if to say something, but then looked down and pretended to be busy. The security guard waited patiently while Sophia packed her few personal items into a cardboard box someone had already placed on her desk. A small potted plant her mother had given her, a framed photo of her and her mom from last Christmas, her favorite coffee mug with the faded "Best Daughter" text. That was it. 3 years of loyalty reduced to a single cardboard box. As she walked toward the elevator with the guard beside her, she kept her head high. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she didn't make a scene. But inside, she was breaking. When the elevator doors closed, the first tear finally escaped. Outside the building, Sophia stood on the sidewalk in front of the sleek glass tower, the cardboard box heavy in her arms. The morning sun felt too bright. The noise of the city felt too loud. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Pharmacy notification, final notice. Payment overdue for Mrs. Bennett's medication. Service will be suspended in 48 hours unless payment is received. She stared at the screen until it blurred. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet, shaking tears that rolled down her cheeks as she stood there on the busy sidewalk, people walking past her like she was invisible. She had done the right thing, and it had cost her everything. The days blurred together in a haze of rejection and exhaustion. Sophia applied to over 60 jobs in the first 3 weeks. Most didn't even reply. The few that did sent polite rejection emails, "Thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, we have decided to move forward with other candidates." She started selling whatever she could, clothes, books, even the small gold earrings her mother had given her for her 21st birthday. Every evening she sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand and pretending everything was fine. "How's work, sweetheart?" her mother would ask weakly. "Fine, Mom, everything's fine." She couldn't bring herself to tell her the truth. Not yet. The hospital bills kept growing. The rent notice came. Then the eviction warning. Sophia started skipping meals so she could afford her mother's pain medication. She felt herself slowly disappearing. The quiet, steady woman who once believed doing the right thing mattered was fading away. She spent many nights sitting on the floor of her small apartment, surrounded by rejection letters, staring at the wall until the sun came up. One particularly bad night, she opened the envelope she had kept from that fateful evening. The one Marcus had slid across the desk. She looked at the money inside for a long time. Then she closed it again and put it away. She still hadn't spent a single dollar, because she still knew. The rain was still falling when the man in the grey coat approached Sophia's table in the small coffee shop near the hospital. She was sitting with her laptop open, updating her resume for the 100th time when he stopped beside her. "Sophia Bennett?" She looked up, startled. "Yes, my name is Daniel Reyes. I'm with the external audit team investigating Lang Investment Partners." He sat down across from her without waiting for an invitation. "We've been reviewing the Meridian deal for the past 3 weeks, he said, keeping his voice low. "Financial irregularities, inflated valuations, backdated documents. Several executives appear to have accepted bribes to push the deal through." Sophia's hands tightened around her coffee cup until her knuckles turned white. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You were Marcus Langford's executive assistant. You handled most of the documentation for that file." Sophia nodded slowly, her throat dry. "I did." Daniel studied her face carefully. "Then you'll know about the supplemental payment packets that were distributed." He paused, then added the line that made her breath catch. "Out of 12 people who had access to those documents, 11 accepted the bribe. You were the only one who refused." Sophia stared at him. For a moment, the noise of the rain and the soft chatter in the cafe faded away. She had assumed she was just another casualty of corporate restructuring. Now she was learning she had been the only one who said no. Daniel continued, his tone professional but not unkind. "We've reviewed your emails, your access logs, and your work history. Everything checks out. You never touched the altered files. You never signed the supplemental agreements. You pushed the envelope back." He slid a thin folder across the table. These are statements from 3 other employees who admitted to taking the money. They all mentioned the same thing. Marcus Langford personally offered it to them. But when we asked about you, they said you were the only one who walked away without taking anything." Sophia opened the folder with trembling fingers. She saw her own name highlighted in multiple reports. One line stood out. Sophia Bennett was the only person who said, "I'll know." She pushed the envelope back and left the office. Daniel watched her reaction. "We're not here to offer you your old job back, Miss Bennett," he said. Sophia looked up, surprised. "Then why are you here?" He leaned back slightly. "Because the board is cleaning house. Marcus Langford and 4 senior executives are likely facing criminal charges. The company is being restructured from the ground up. They need people they can actually trust in key compliance and oversight roles." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We want to offer you the position of Senior Compliance Director, reporting directly to the new interim CEO. Starting salary is significantly higher than what you are making. Full medical benefits, including coverage for your mother's ongoing treatment, and a retention bonus that should clear most of your current debts." Sophia sat completely still. The offer was everything she had desperately needed weeks ago, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like justice that had come too late. She closed the folder slowly. "I need time to think about it," she said quietly. Daniel nodded, understanding. "Of course, take all the time you need, but the offer expires in 10 days. He stood up and placed a business card on the table. "One more thing, Miss Bennett." She looked up. "Marcus Langford asked about you yesterday during his exit interview. When we told him you were the only one who refused the bribe, he didn't say anything. He just looked away." Daniel gave her a small, respectful nod and left. Sophia sat alone at the table, the rain still falling outside. She thought about her mother lying in the hospital bed. She thought about the cardboard box she had carried out of the building. She thought about Marcus Langford's calm, controlled voice saying, "Take the money!" And for the first time since that night, she allowed herself to feel something other than despair. Not anger, not triumph, just a quiet, steady clarity. The days that followed, Sophia didn't accept the offer immediately. She spent the next few days sitting with her mother in the hospital, thinking. She walked through the city, replaying that night in Marcus's office over and over. She remembered the way his voice had stayed so calm, so rational, as if he were discussing quarterly reports instead of asking her to commit fraud. She remembered how he had looked at her when she pushed the envelope back, not with rage, but with disappointment, as if she had failed him, as if she had been the one who let him down. On the 8th day, she called Daniel Reyes. "I'll take the position," she said quietly. 10 days after Daniel Reyes's visit, Sophia Bennett walked back into the Lang Investment Partners building. This time, she didn't carry a cardboard box. She carried a new employee badge with her photo and the title Senior Compliance Director printed beneath her name. The security guard at the lobby did a double take when he saw her. "Miss Bennett?" he said, surprised. Sophia gave him a small, calm smile. "Good morning, Marcus." She took the elevator to the 42nd floor. The office looked different now. Many familiar faces were gone. New teams were being brought in. The atmosphere felt tense but hopeful, like a company trying to rebuild its soul after a scandal. As she walked down the hallway toward her new office, she passed the conference room where she had been fired. And then she saw him. Marcus Langford. He was being escorted out by 2 security guards, his tie loosened, carrying a small box of his own belongings. His face was pale. The confident, controlled mask he had always worn was cracked. Their eyes met in the middle of the hallway. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Marcus opened his mouth as if to say something, an apology perhaps, or an excuse, but no words came. Sophia simply held his gaze with the same steady clarity she had shown that night in his office. There was no anger in her eyes, no satisfaction, only a quiet understanding. She had lost everything for a few weeks. He had lost everything that actually mattered. His reputation, his power, and the last shred of self-respect. Marcus was the first to look away. He lowered his head and continued walking toward the elevator, a broken man being led out of the building he once ruled. Sophia watched him go for a moment, then turned and continued down the hallway to her new office. She sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and began her first day in her new role. No dramatic speech, no celebration, just quiet, earned dignity. The weeks that followed. The first month in her new position was intense. Sophia spent long hours reviewing documents, meeting with the new leadership team, and helping rebuild the compliance framework that had been compromised under Marcus's watch. She was good at it. Her quiet, methodical nature, the same quality that had made her push the envelope back that night, made her excellent at spotting irregularities and asking the right questions. Margaret Klein, the interim CEO, quickly came to rely on her. One afternoon, Margaret called Sophia into her office. "You know," she said, leaning back in her chair, "when we first offered you this role, I wasn't sure how you'd handle it. Most people who go through what you went through either become bitter or overly aggressive. You've done neither." Sophia gave a small shrug. "I just want to do the job right." Margaret studied her for a moment. "You're not just doing the job right, Sophia. You're setting a new standard. The board has noticed." She slid a new contract across the desk. Permanent position, significant raise. Full benefits package, including comprehensive medical coverage for your mother, and a performance bonus that should clear any remaining debts. Sophia looked at the numbers. They were life-changing. She accepted the contract with a quiet, "Thank you." That evening she went to the hospital with the good news. Her mother was sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in months, thanks to the new treatment protocol that was now fully covered. "I got the permanent position, Mom," Sophia said, sitting on the edge of the bed, her mother's eyes filled with tears. "You did the right thing, sweetheart, even when it hurt so much. I'm so proud of you." Sophia leaned forward and rested her head on her mother's shoulder. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel safe. 3 months later, Sophia walked into the same glass building she had once been escorted out of in shame. This time, she wore a tailored navy blazer and carried herself with the same quiet confidence she had always possessed. Only now, it was backed by authority and respect. As she stepped out of the elevator on the 42nd floor, she saw a familiar face being escorted toward the exit by security. Marcus Langford! He looked older. His suit was still expensive, but it hung differently on him now. His eyes carried the weight of public disgrace and private regret. Their eyes met for a few seconds. No words were spoken. Marcus looked away first. He lowered his head and continued walking, a broken man being led out of the building he once ruled. Sophia watched him go for a moment, then turned and continued to her office. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and began another day of work, doing things the right way. Because some choices cost you everything until they show you what everything was really worth. Some choices cost you everything, not in grand cinematic explosions, but in quiet, crushing ways. The overdraft notices that keep coming, the worried calls from the hospital, the silent judgment in the eyes of people who used to smile at you. Sophia Bennett made one of those choices. She refused a bribe that could have solved all her problems in a single night. She said, "I'll know," when it would have been so much easier to say nothing, and for that single sentence she lost her job, her stability, and nearly her hope. But integrity has a strange way of revealing its true value, not immediately, not dramatically. It reveals itself slowly, in the quiet moments when the world tests whether you meant what you said. Marcus Langford learned this the hard way. He had built an empire on control and perception. He had convinced himself that bending the rules was just smart business, until the one person who refused to bend showed him how fragile his entire world really was. The story of Sophia Bennett is not about instant karma or dramatic revenge. It's about the quiet power of choosing to live with yourself, of refusing to trade your soul for temporary relief, of standing alone when everyone else sits down, because sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is the only thing that proves who you really are, and in the end, that proof is worth more than any envelope full of money. Some choices cost you everything, until they show you what everything was really worth. Thank you for watching. If this story of quiet strength and integrity moved you, please like the video and subscribe to Veiled Flame for more powerful, emotional stories every week. What would you have done if you were in Sophia's place? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next story.